one of the ways our culture has really been served as a detriment is, we make fun of people who have these moments. Tyrese had a moment and y'all cracked on him. Y'all joked on him. Kanye had a moment and y'all cracked on him. This is why black men don't open up. This is Caesar Walker, the cool, calm, collected one.
And I'm Ronnie Gatry, the emotional one.
And we are the Tipping Point Podcast, your source for the black male's perspective.
Tipping Point Podcast.
Something came across a group me I have with several close friends of mine. And I'm just going to read the title and I'm just going to share why I thought this was a candidate for our main topic tonight. Black male suicides rising faster than any other racial group. Okay, so this conversation, excuse me. When I saw this, I was alarmed, number one. My immediate thoughts were, as black men, we deal with enough as it is. We deal with a lot. But one narrative I haven't been that aware of is, with everything that we go through on a day-to-day basis in society, I'd never seen this type of ending to it. Usually like, well, black men in particular are often accused of hiding their feelings and emotions or whatever and not sharing as openly as we should, right? I kind of associate, or I used to associate, a level of strength with that. But when I think about that, I'm like, man, I've never seen it so deeply compounded to where it would lead to a black man taking his own life or trying to take his own life. Like, that was alarming to me. And I'll just say it. From what we see, mainstream news media things, I mean, we don't really get many things scrolling across the ticker about black people taking their lives. Black men, excuse me. At least not from what I've seen. Logic had the song, about the suicide thing or whatever. Logic's a white male. You know what I mean?
Biracial.
Is Logic biracial?
He is biracial.
Okay. Well, throw that out. But
back to you, Gavin.
But it's just, I don't know, man. Sadly, as sad as it is to admit, this is so bad, but when I think of suicide, I think of a white male that I grew up with who unfortunately took his own life. And, I don't know. It's just hard for me to associate that with black men for whatever reason.
Why?
Just because I think across the spectrum of us as black men, I think collectively we are strong. And that's kind of like a cop-out. We talk about church a lot. Growing up in church, I know I was taught, if you take your own life, you're going straight to hell. That's a sin. And we know how that influence goes in the Southern Baptist, predominantly black church for most people, right? But also in the Southern Baptist, predominantly black church, a lot of those things like that go unsaid. It's just kind of like you hear from one person and then you just got to apply that for yourself. We're not going to collectively, as a church body, lean into those topics.
Yeah.
Right? Fair?
Sure.
Growing up, this is years ago. This is the 80s.
I mean, the church stayed away. There was a lot of topics the church stayed away from.
Right.
But, yeah.
Right. So why do I think that is? Because of those factors. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going on. Obviously, it is.
Sure.
But I'm just telling you the length of my thought.
Gotcha. Okay.
Your thoughts, sir?
On what exactly?
What came to mind for you when you saw that headline? Were you like, huh?
No. Well, when you mentioned it to me, I wanted to research it.
Right.
Because I think it intrigued me that it was that was a thing, right? And the suicide rates among black men are very high. I'm looking at a page right here by the Suicide Prevention Resource Center, and it talks about 7.4 per 100,000. It's like the age-adjusted suicide rate for black populations is over half of what the overall U.S. suicide rate of 13.2 per 100. So in our group, we make up 13% of the population. So that's kind of high given what we make of it, right? And then it talks about how amongst our group, we're almost 4 times as likely than women. And this is actually suicide. This is successful attempts. Now, before we talked, Black was doing some research on people who are struggling with thoughts of suicide versus attempted. You know, I don't have that represented here. It's actually successful attempts that I'm looking at. But when I think about that, I just start reflecting on how, from a culturally, how our value system has been shaped. You kind of alluded to it, that we're supposed to be strong. You know, even as a child, we've been taught not to cry and not to bottle up our emotions. And that kind of becomes a way of life for us. Even though we know that we have to go out into a world where, for the most part, we have to and face life like everyone else with a few wrinkles here and there, whether it's racism, whether it's whatever the case may be. Where's our outlet? You know what I mean? I was never afforded an outlet as a child. So where's my outlet as an adult? And as I get older, I'm carrying more stress, more trauma, more challenges, more whatever, right? Where do I go? Where do I put this? Right? And, you know, our culture has been, one of the ways our culture has really been served as a detriment is, you know, we make fun of people who have these moments. I saw a meme that showed Tyrese had a moment and y'all cracked on him. Y'all joked on him. Kanye had a moment and y'all cracked on him. This is why Black men don't open up. You know what I mean? And I was like, that's powerful, because if we had that final breakdown, a lot of Black men are afraid that it's going to be perceived as being weak and I'm an easy target for you to pile on even more. And that's just been something in our culture that's, in my opinion, has worked to the detriment of men, because a lot of men have been encouraged by the actions of a lot of, especially on social media, but a lot of men have been encouraged to suffer in silence as a result of that. And apart from any type of resources that are available, or the will to even take advantage of resources like therapy and seeing a doctor and the whole nine, we just deal with it until we can't no longer. And so I think there are some things that has to start changing with us in terms of having children and breaking some cycles that have been kind of constant and have contributed, because again, our race has experienced enough trauma as it is. We're just now opening up to the idea of mental health. So with that in mind, I just think that what we're seeing in terms of the data is all of this coming to a head. I think we're just starting to wrap our minds around mental health and that it's a thing. I don't think we understand just how deep this goes until we see it reflected in statistics such as these.
You put that very well, sir.
Thank you.
Another thought I had in terms of my scope of receiving this information, being very, narrow, very acute. Do you think Black male suicides are as prevalent across media channels as other races? Because not
unless you're a celebrity.
Right. Okay. So there you go. And then I think maybe it was y'all. We had this conversation with. We're talking about the number of Black people that go missing every year, and we don't hear about it.
Right.
Like there are other channels we have to intentionally go to hear about stuff like that.
Right.
You have to rely on social media movements.
Right.
I wonder if the same case can be made for Black male suicide rates.
outside of studies that occur, I don't know who's really pushing it. And again, I'm not necessarily looking for it.
Sure.
So
sure.
it could very well be people out there trying to bring awareness to it, right? We're in the information age. So surely someone is out there trying to let it be known. But no, I think that for black men or just men in general is just, I think that I just don't think a lot of awareness has been brought to it.
Gotcha.
Just because of the expectations that we have of men. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think it's more socially acceptable for a woman to be vulnerable openly. It's more socially accepted for her to the sympathy, the empathy that women receive versus that of a man is greater, in my opinion. Bring it to our community, it's even less, right? And so I think we are working so hard to just be, and I'm not saying this for everyone, but just generally, we're working to be I think what's so criminal is when we see media dehumanize us in so many ways. And one of the things that we talk about with the War Report is we try to bring the humanity back into sports and how people tend to really criticize a player beyond what they do on the field, or a coach beyond what they do on the field. One of the things, we talk about is, we talk about speculations of people getting fired or whatever, but you got to remember, you want a coach fired, but there are like 40 families attached to that one coach you want fired.
Right.
With children and all of that. Those kids go to school. They got to hear that about.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? And so what happens is when we forget about the humanity, it's easy to be insensitive. And so that has been an uphill climb, is for people to see the humanity in us as black people, as a people. Right. Now, on an individual basis, you can get to know someone and see the humanity.
Sure.
But as a group, where is the humanity for that?
Right.
And I think once you get that humanity restored, we can become a lot more sensitive to what humans go through, in my opinion.
Gotcha.
What do you think, Black? You've been quiet.
No, I was just looking at some stats, and it was like with the
hit us.
I was trying to see just in general, what were the top causes of death among black males, and like if just overall, suicide is not in the top 10. But if you go to a breakdown by age, from like 1 to 19, suicide comes in at number 3.
Wow. And
then if you go from 20 to 44, suicide comes at number 4.
20 to what age?
20 to 44.
Okay.
And then once you get beyond that,
tapers off.
No suicide is showing up in the top 10.
Tapers off.
So it seems like, I guess the emphasis, if you're trying to educate people, would be like at very young age, like starting when we're in school. Like that's what you need to focus on, educating people's like very early on, because at 45, it's not even an issue. Well, it's not it's not in the top 10 anymore.
You said, thanks for that, by the way. Appreciate you for that. You emphasize the sense of urgency for a person in their developmental years to kind of be able to address their emotional, psychological well-being. You all right, dude?
Getting choked up over this?
No, I drank some water earlier, and I really feel like it went down the wrong pipe. It's just the body's trying to do what it does.
Okay.
Forgive me.
How do we do that, Gatry, in your opinion? Because again, you mentioned church. You mentioned, I think when you say things like church, I will sum up the church in saying, and not so much the church, I just think previous generations have kind of used fear to discourage people from suicide. And, if you have a God consciousness, who wants to go to hell? So we'll use that, but again, it doesn't deal with what a person is dealing with on a daily basis. Right?
Yeah.
So now that we're in 2022, what are some ways, and this doesn't have to be you can be black or you're like, what are some ways we can encourage our children at a young age, our black boys at a young age, to get ahead of their mental health?
Well, I mean, thinking of me, and I've got a lot of room for improvement with this, but there's got to be topics that are not taboo.
Yeah.
Just has to be, and it's tough. It's tough as a parent, but I guess the big goal for me, or one of the big goals for me as a father, is I want to create that space to where my boys know they can come to me and talk about anything. Right? Now, there's a lot that comes with that. That's a huge responsibility, of course. But I feel like if you're successful at getting that established, then yeah, when conversations like these arise, you've got that emotional equity to capitalize off of.
Okay. What you got, Black?
When you mentioned the church and how it used to have a great influence on people, that got me to thinking about like what is the biggest influence nowadays, and that's social media.
For sure. That's
and
the
I'm
new
thinking,
church.
with social media, you got to find some way to like counteract or overcome social media's influence on kids and how they perceive themselves, and like, I guess what success looks like for them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So maybe social media is the way to get in touch with them, but I'm not sure like how you can do that through social media and have it be a positive impact on them.
Is it how do you feel about the statement that social media should supplement what you're doing with the child?
I mean, I believe that, I'm not a parent, but if I was a parent, I would make sure that like,
because there's no getting around social
phone
media.
time is like very limited. Like,
Yeah.
your phone, like I would have controls over your phone.
Oh, for sure.
You only have like maybe 2 hours a day of social media or being on your phone.
For sure.
That's how I would approach it.
Actually, yeah, you wouldn't get a lot during the week.
Yeah.
Like you can get more time on the weekend, but during the week, yeah, you're on a regiment. Like you're on a routine. You're the one with children. What do you say?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and thankfully our boys aren't at that stage yet, but that, that's part of what, I mean, we implement it now with their iPads. Like we're controlling.
That's not a bad thing, man.
It's
not
not
a bad
it's
thing.
not. But we're very intentional about what all they can get to.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, I mean, dude, YouTube Kids from the onset or from the outside looking in seems pretty safe. But dude, you get in there deep enough, Google can only do so much. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So yeah, I'm with that, and I think some of it starts now, and really, and I never thought I'd be this parent walker, but I get it now. But really being in tune, especially with the parents of the friends of your kids.
Oh, for sure.
Cause like that's one thing I'm very thankful for about when my boys are in school now. Like, especially my oldest son, he's been with the same group of guys since he was 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, through sports, Boy Scouts, other things, we've gotten to know the families. And the motive is to, let's all work together. Let's all be cultivated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that helps a lot, just because that helps you kind of manage whatever influences are coming in.
Sure. I mean, I remember hearing my parents say, we don't know they folks.
Right.
You know what I mean? When I asked to hang out with such and such, we don't know their folks.
Right.
So we don't know their behavior because we don't know who's influencing their behavior.
Right.
What about our age?
Dude.
What about us?
So
I mean, those of us.
I'm gonna brag on my homies on this one, dude, like for real. And most of these homies I grew up in the church with. But dude, we have to be intentional about creating safe spaces to talk about things like this. Our primary channel is the GroupMe app, obviously, but I've seen even that spawn off into other micro conversations about some real heavy hitting stuff that several guys in our group have said, man, I'm so thankful for this communication medium because I've been dealing with this, but just not knowing how to communicate it. And not only have you provided a safe space for me to communicate it, I don't feel judged at all.
Yeah.
You know, so like it took a level of intentionality, and it takes a lot of courage, of course, even with guys that you've known since you were single digits. Still takes a lot of courage to say, hey, look, man, I'm struggling with this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Like, you know, I guess in layman's terms, you say small groups or whatever, but you know, I think that's very important, very crucial.
So community,
100%.
I think that's good. Black, can you think of any that's beneficial for us today?
What you mean?
Like, what are some, like, I'm thinking of solutions, right?
Yeah.
What are some, and again, this is something that we're scratching the surface on, so we're not claiming to be professionals in any way, but just things we've seen that have benefited those, either ourselves or people we know. What are some things that can help reverse this trend that we're seeing with Black men and suicide rates?
The thing that come to mind is just being, I guess, where their eyeballs are. Like, where are they going to, like, get information from if they're seeking out information? Like, that's kind of like the spaces we need to kind of like be in.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to keep beating the drum of social media, but like, if that's where they're going to be going, we need to have some sort of positive resource there for them.
Sure.
If that's where they're going to be. But I guess it would also help when y'all say community. I'm not a big church attender, but I would think the church would have could have like a positive impact if people would like join that church community. Because when you mentioned small groups, that's one of the biggest things I've seen as far as like churches, like especially the big churches. If you could find a group of like-minded people that are supportive, that can be huge for you.
Sure.
And like when you were talking about it, it made me think about like I have a very select group. Like your group is big compared to who I would talk to. But the thing about it is, I remember it didn't start off as easy. It took practice, like talking with them, saying the right things, knowing that like each time I would say something, no one would slap my hand or no one would like reprimand me. Like, okay, it took stages to get to the point where I could have these conversations. It wasn't easy in the beginning.
Right.
So I guess finding your community and then building that community so you can have that level of trust within that community.
That's good. I mentioned it. I mean, we mention it all the time, but therapy.
Yeah.
Therapy. And caveat to therapy, though. I think, the analogy I give is that of a couple going to premarital counseling. You can treat it like a formality, or you can treat it like it's serious. It's a serious thing.
Sure.
You're engaged. You're a willing participant in the counseling, right? There are a lot of people who go to school, and going to school is a good thing. They don't graduate. They don't do homework. They party, right? Going to school is a good thing, but it's what you do when you get there that's going to determine the ultimate outcome you wish to achieve. So if you're going to therapy, I would encourage you, first off, and there's a page we follow on IG. I think it's therapy for Black girls. They posted something a while back, like things to look for in a therapist, like finding the right therapist. And you can attest to this. Finding the right therapist is very important, right? Just like with anything else, like you're looking for a mechanic, you're just not gonna take it to Joe Schmo down the street. Right. You're gonna research to find out.
You're gonna talk to somebody.
Yeah, you're gonna research that person. You're gonna find out if they're legit, right? Therapists should be the same way. And when you get there, you want to maximize your time. You want to maximize this window of opportunity. So hopefully they're pushing you, they're giving you homework, they're doing things to challenge you. Should you participate and you're engaged in that process, that will supplement community, that will supplement other things that you're doing as well. So I think when we talk about therapy, as important as that is, I mentioned to you, that should also be a goal when you're going to therapy. What's the end goal? And that should be something that your therapist understands and is helping you, giving you a plan to get there, and you're following that plan. And it's good to have your community aware of it, accountability, people keeping you on track. I think those things help. I think accountability is important too. And I think you need it because, see, we all have vices. We all have things we're dealing with. It may not be suicide. You know what I mean? It could just be, it could be, you just get weak as a man and you trying to be faithful, you trying to do right. And, but you got brothers who can keep you in line.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so whatever you're dealing with, there should also be some built-in, with that community should be some built-in accountability as well.
Right.
And just like therapy, you got to be a willing participant. You got to want the accountability because it's easy to get defensive and push people away who really do care about you. So there's a lot of work we have to do in order to reach the outcomes we want. You can have everything around you at your disposal. It's like that. It's like that watching, we watch, there's a lot of sports going on. Just had the Super Bowl, basketball is picking up. The worst thing is when you see a gifted, talented team get beat by a team that works harder and is less talented, right?
Right.
Because you can see the gift in that team and they know they gifted. That's the problem. They know they talented. They got everything at their disposal. They're just not putting the work in.
Right.
And you end up getting beat. We have a lot of resources at our disposal in this day and age. We don't want to get beat because we're not putting the work in.
Right.
And so that'll just, I'm a tough love guy. I think about the topics we talked about, crying.
Yeah.
And I mentioned how I don't feel that men, when they're faced with adversity, they got families depending on them. I don't feel like that's the time to cry, but I feel that in a vacuum, that's true, but you need an outlet.
Yeah.
When there's no adversity, you need to go get you some help, right? You got to go unpack all of what you just dealt with, right?
Right.
And so I think that when you put all those things, when you create an environment for you to offload that, because you still got to be a leader, you still got to go out in this brutal world and be a man. I feel that you do have to make and create opportunities for you to charge yourself up and build yourself up. There are a lot of men who are out here trying to do life on a drained battery. Oof. And we got to find our charging stations. We have to find what keeps us going. So that's just, just my thoughts. Just my thoughts. What do you guys think about, we talk about meditate. What do you think about meditating? What are your thoughts on that?
It's not something I do ever.
Okay.
I was about to say something I don't do often, but I gotta be honest. I mean, not on purpose, at least, not intentional meditation.
You're not knocking it. You just haven't done it. It's
right.
not.
And if I'm sure I can be honest here, I put meditation and prayer in the same bucket.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's right.
Okay.
That's just
gotcha. But you do pray.
Oh yeah.
Okay. What do you think about it, Black?
I don't meditate or pray really.
Gotcha.
I do have downtime where I'm like, there's not like going on in my head, like maybe like 20 minutes before I go to bed. Mm-hmm. Like we not falling asleep, but I do think I run things through my head, but I'm not really I don't really consider that meditating. But I do have time that's like, it's quiet time, reflective time. I don't know if I'm using synonyms. Are they the same thing as meditating? But
yeah, that's meditation.
Okay.
That's meditation.
Show him what he's won, Walker.
Well, when I think of meditation, I'm thinking like sitting on the floor with my legs crossed.
It's almost, right. That's exactly what I knew he was thinking about. I knew that's where he was going.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's but again, when you pray, you don't get on. Hopefully, you don't have to go through the formality of getting on your knees and holding your hand together in front. Do you do that? Okay, I'm just asking. But what I'm just saying is,
I mean, sometimes.
but not all the time.
True.
There's more ways to pray.
Sometimes you just got to get a prayer up. Yeah.
And my thing is, for me, that's me communicating with God. I don't get on my knees and talk to anybody like that, right? That would be. Could you imagine how awful that's just? But that's my relationship with God. Like we relate as though I'm.
Imagine walking by your cube at work and you got your hands like this.
I'm just thinking.
Like I'm coming to you, Gatcher, and I get on my knees and say, "So, Gatcher, how was your day today?" You know what I mean? Could you imagine? So for me, like I'm talking to God,
Right.
Right. So prayer is a part of it, but my wife and I do confessions.
Oh, wow.
Like we confess the outcomes we want.
All right, Usher.
Sure.
And these are my confessions. But we confess, and that's a part of the meditation is the things that you want, you're speaking life to it. And for me, I'm a stickler for the things that you say about yourself, about your life. Like you and I usually it's a principle that comes from the Bible, but a lot of different cultures and religions practice this.
Right.
It's a mental thing that the thing I continue to say about myself, I'll begin to eventually believe it and see it. Whatever you say about yourself, good or negative. And so it's like diet, right? You got to eat. You're constantly putting food in your body, but when you're making a conscious decision that this is what I'm putting in my body for a certain outcome, I get the results I want. Your thoughts are the same way. Your thoughts are never empty. Thoughts are always coming in. You have to police what thoughts come in. And the best way to do it is by what you're saying about yourself. And it's always that exercise. I think I did it here on the podcast with you. Like I had you count to 10 in your head. It wasn't you? Okay.
It may have been.
This was a long time ago.
It was like pre-studio?
Yes.
It was back at the
Absolutely.
dental office. Okay.
Yeah.
Back in the lobby.
I had you count to a certain number, and then I asked you what you had for breakfast, and then you lost sight of what you were thinking because that's how strong.
Me?
Right.
He counted to 2.
Right. Barely. But you see what I'm saying? Like that's how your mind works. It responds to words than it does thoughts. And so that's why the concept of like meditating and speaking things over yourself is very important. So that's something I would encourage brothers to do. Like research confessions and things you say over yourself. Like you're on the way to work, talk about what kind of day you're going to have. Talk about, I'm going to do well today. This is going to be, I may have challenges, but I'm going to be my mind. You know what I mean? You're level setting your mind and preparing yourself for the day.
All right.
And those are things that my wife and I, we do as a couple. We do for our, just whatever it is that's going on in our lives, we speak to it. And it helps me to get my mind focused. Again, this goes with community, therapy, all these things. I'm just giving you things to put in your toolbox that'll help you when you engage life. If you got those types of challenges. So that's all I got. What are your thoughts on that, guys?
No, I like that. And you're just making me so thankful for my tribe, which I include y'all as a part of too. But it's made me thankful and made me realize just how rare that is. So but yeah.
Awesome. You good?
Yeah.
It's your topic.
Thank you.
Put a bow on it.
Yes.
Bow is placed.
Keep Your Point Podcast.